classic whodunits to modern psychological thrillers, each episode offers exclusive insights, behind-the-scenes stories, and discussions on the art of crafting compelling crime narratives. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or a newcomer to the genre, Books to Die For is your ultimate guide to the thrilling world of crime literature.
I'm Al Warren, and Mr. Joe Goldberg is with me today.
I'm in the house.
You're in the house. Speaking of storyteller, we've got one with us today, and he's got a new book. It's The Accidental Joe, so it's kind of like you, but an accident.
We're everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Too many.
My mom said it, my dad said.
The Top Secret Life of a Celebrity Chef. So, Mr. Tom Straw, thank you for being here.
It's wonderful to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Pleasure to meet both of you, or meet both.
What made you get into the world of writing? Because you've done, as in books.
Yeah.
Because you've done a lot of writing with television in in your past. So, what would make you jump over?
A desire that I've had to do that since I was a youngster. I mean, if I look back on my rather checkered career, which involved radio and then television writing and now novels and still television, frankly, I always was a storyteller. And, I can remember being a kid. This will date me, but when I was a kid, there were these little metal typewriters you could get where you spun a dial and you could type one letter at a time, and then you spun the dial again and type another letter. And I found myself in my room when I was like a kid, 10 years old, trying to write the neighborhood newsletter, until I realized, the circulation would take me forever to get one done by a page. But it really gave me the bug. I love storytelling. I've always been an avid reader, and I've always looked at books as saying, boy, someday I wonder if I could do that. And I reached a point where, I guess about 15, 16 years ago, I said, I'm going to stop wondering and I'm going to write one. That led to, this is my 10th published book coming out now.
Were you publishing under a different name? Do I understand this correctly?
My first book was under my own name, and it was called The Trigger Episode, and it was basically a roman à clef for my experience on a TV series in LA with a diva who was the star. And so I wrote that up. It sold to a smaller house, and it was well received, but unfortunately a German company bought the publisher, and they only wanted the nonfiction catalog, so that told me there's no future. But my publisher went to Hyperion Publishing, which is ABC Disney, or at least it was at the time, and he took me to lunch one day, and he said, there's a show that just came on called Castle, and we had an idea for a tie-in book. Would you be insulted if we asked you to write a ghost, sort of a gimmick book, just as if you're Richard Castle? We'll make it straight to paperback, one-off, and cash the check, and there you go. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. Well, it went to number 6 on the New York Times, and that was the first of 7 of those books that I wrote. The third one went to number 1. So, yes, I had an assumed name, and that name was Richard Castle while I did those.
Right. You weren't running from the law.
No. I subsequently published under my own name because Stephen King was already taken.
Take it back.
Yeah, that's true. I enjoyed those books. I loved the show. The books were fun to write, and I really, really appreciated my association with the executive producer, creator of the show, because we agreed when I started doing them. I didn't want to do a novelization. I didn't want to take their episode and then write it up, as a book. I wanted to take my own ideas and use the book as sort of a template for where things would go. So I basically kept the same structure of the characters and the situation of Castle, but I changed all the names and used, if you can follow this, the premise of Castle was that Rick Castle was a famous mystery writer who had lost his muse, and he was now trying to get that mojo back by doing a ride-along with the NYPD. He falls for Kate Beckett, who is the cop who's driving him around, and this became then, for me, his idealized version of his life in the show put into a book. So here's a guy looking for inspiration, The show is his experience, and the book is what he wrote fictionalized based on that experience.
The character in the book, did you build on him and did they take your character from the book, or how did you do character development? That's the key to stories, right? Character development?
Yeah, right. It's an excellent question because these were the things I asked myself when I began. First of all, his name was Richard Castle. I changed the guy's name to Jameson Rook. So if you know chess, you got the castle and you got the rook.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from just that glib change, I didn't want him to be the famous mystery writer. I wanted everything to be like 10 or 20 degrees off what the show was, so it would have that sort of fictionalized feel. So I made him a Pulitzer Prize-winning magazine writer. I kind of figured like Dominic Dunn, for instance, make him a guy like that. And so he was still in the world of letters, but he was more into reporting and interviewing and doing nonfiction writing as opposed to writing, blockbuster mysteries.
Did you find it difficult to start that writing process, then change as you have gone through 15 years? Is it a fun thing for you to do? I mean, to be honest, is it a fun thing, or is it one of those first draft good, second revision stinks, that type of,
Yeah, well, that's a great question because I'll give you the real simple answer, and that is that I love it. I still love it. It's still fun. I write every day. In fact, sometimes I have to get myself away from the desk. I love it so much. But that's not to say it's all golden. It's a lot like golf. It's like all the things, the emotions you go through in 18 rounds. And you have good days, you have bad days, you have good drafts, you have bad drafts. And my whole thing is really just, let me go back. One of the things that the Castle experience taught me, after having written my first book, which took me 3 years to write, I had to write my first Castle book in 2 months.
Ouch.
Yeah, and I also had another job. I was a writer for Craig Ferguson on the Late Late Show at that time, simultaneously. So my day was I would be at the conference table with Craig and the other writers at 10 o'clock in the morning, pitching ideas for the monologue, and then do sketch writing and things like that during the day. And then there's the show on camera at 5, done at 6. And I would then grab dinner and go back to the apartment. I was commuting from here. I live in Connecticut. I was commuting from here to L.A. I had an apartment. I'd go to my apartment, and I would write from 9 p.m. to 2 or 3 in the morning, and then reset the next day to do it all over again. And my point there is that I was under a real wicked deadline for the first book, and I had no time to do anything but roll on. It made me, as a novelist and writer generally, much more reliant and believing in my instincts, as opposed to pondering and weighing and, gee, let me think about this and I'll go back to it tomorrow. I was against the clock, and I had to get stuff written. And so basically I said to myself, whatever idea I get that feels like it has promise, I'm going to run with that. And that not only made it more fun, but it just creatively opened me up so much and made me less ponderous.
You liked having that deadline to write?
I do. I will say this. The first couple books were under such an onerous deadline, especially with doing the Ferguson show at the same time. And that overlap lasted like 3 years. I said to myself, I can do this if it's a mission, but I can't live my life doing all of this all at once. And so that became difficult. But then I got weary of the 4 years of commuting to L.A. once a month to do the show, 4 weeks out there, 1 week home at a shot. So that when I came back here and I ended up, I was the head writer and executive producer on Nurse Jackie on Showtime. That was ideal. I mean, that was 6 months on Nurse Jackie, and then I had another 6 months of my own. So I could then write my next book during that period. I didn't have to do it while I was juggling the other bowling pin, if you will.
I absolutely love Craig Ferguson.
He's a great guy. He and I are still friends. In fact, I saw him 3 weeks ago. He's inspiring. He's funny. He's so off the wall. Like he really is a spark to creativity when you're around him, because he is so crackling with it himself. And he's a great guy, too. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
He probably wouldn't like me to say that.
Okay, well, he's a terrible man. How's that?
Yeah.
He's awful.
Yes.
It's a shame.
Edit.
Yeah. Now listen, do you write with a reason? Is there something behind what you write when you tell a story? Like this story came out, somewhere when you were running, you said. So, but is there a meaning behind what you write, or is it just purely entertainment?
I have to have some meaning that goes beyond the gloss, if you will. That I knew when I got that idea for this book, that the little tuning fork in me said, there's something there. And so I knew that was going to be something. I didn't know what yet, and that kind of excited me and scared me at the same time. Even when I was writing comedy for television, I really couldn't do anything unless I had some kind of substance attached to it, whether it's a bit of psychology. And I don't mean like deep meaning. I mean, in Night Court, we had a lot of fun, but character mattered. And with The Accidental Joe, it not only is character, like where did he come from and why is he doing what he's doing, and then there's a romantic interest for him in there, and she's a CIA agent, and she's his handler, and they fall for each other. So that becomes an interesting thing. So I love having that sort of universal theme of basically careers colliding that are mutually exclusive of a continuing romance. The question rises, what happens when they finish the mission? Are they still going to stay together, or she's not going to stay on the show, and he's not going to quit the show? So I think everybody in their life has those kind of things, whether you're selling insurance or whether you're a global capitalist, where you've got two people in a relationship with big careers. That's something people can relate to. The other part of it is I do get into things like duplicity and lying. She necessarily has to keep secrets from him, and he doesn't like that. Mainly because she's afraid he'll talk. He'll blow. He'll shoot his mouth off, and so she has to be measured about what she feeds him, if you will. But at the same time, there's a lot of political backstabbing. There's a lot of, which is one of the things I liked about the John le Carré books so much, is that there was so much of the office politics that became very not only irritating but sometimes lethal, as is the case in my book. And I also like to look at the world stage a little bit. I like to look at there's a Hungarian oligarch who's an important character in my book, and he's the Minister of Agriculture in Hungary. Now that may sound boring, except if you do a little research, which I did, which is something that's important to me, I started looking into how the farmland gets divvied up in Hungary, and who gets it and who doesn't. And there's this, just as you have a sort of a strong man at the top of that country now, and I'm not speaking for or against him, but there's a way that they do business there. And if you're in the club, you get all the land, and therefore you get all the farmland and all the stuff that goes with it. So I got into that a little bit there. And I would also say I'm a cook. I don't do it professionally, but I'm an amateur cook. I'm a foodie. I'm friends with a couple of chefs. I don't know if you know Alton Brown, who was on the Food Network. He did Iron Chef and Good Eats and a number of others. He's a pal. We've been friends for like 12 years. He was one of my beta readers for this book. So I'm kind of steeped in that aspect of it. So I'm rambling a little here, but what I want to say is it isn't to me just a matter of, okay, let's spin a funny little yarn here. I really do try to steep it in what's real, what concerns people, what holds people's interest while they're reading it beyond just the thrills and the action.
Since I formed agency, I was going to ask you how much. There's two lines of research. There's cooking, sort of Jason Matthews, Red Sparrow cooking, and then you've got CIA, Jason Matthews counterintelligence guy. So if you're a food guy, you're a cookie. Okay. How about the agency stuff? The world, you talked about the world politics and Orban and all that. So I guess I'm sort of looking for your research for this book, since it had different subject tracks.
Yeah, I confess I'm not a CIA agent, or if I was, I couldn't tell you.
I haven't heard that before. When I do hear it, I pull out my hatchet and go Jack Carr on you.
I guess I would say my research has been, number one, life of reading about it, particularly the Le Carrés, particularly Graham Greene.
Best. Quiet American, Tinker Tailor, best was, period.
Absolutely. The Human Factor, I mean, name it.
Name it, yeah.
Or if you want a good laugh, Our Man in Havana, which is actually a very funny book. Le Carré, I have a hard time picking my favorites, but if I had, actually I don't have a hard time picking my single favorite, which is A Perfect Spy, which I think is not only a great spy book, but I think is a major novel. But obviously Tinker Tailor and,
Spy Came from the Cold.
Yeah, yes. Which I recently reread. I reread that 3-4 months ago, and it not only holds up, it is still like grabbing.
Right. But they're espionage books. Let me kick in let me add another part for your research question, which I want to make sure you get the answer to, is how do you classify your book? Is it comedy? Is it espionage? Is it satire? What is it? International intrigue? How would you classify it as you're building it and researching it out?
Yeah, that's a good question too. It is a spy thriller. At the same time, one of the things that I do, it's just kind of like what happens when I write. I'm not saying, hey, my specialty is, but one of the things that I have a knack for is integrating humor into dire thrills. It's a balancing act. I mean, I did it with the Castle books quite a bit, but I did it in The Accidental Joe also, where you'll have life, death, cold sweat moments reading it, but then again, at a natural place, at an organic place, will come humor, because that's human. That's especially when you have, and this is what I like about my character that I created, is that he's a wise guy. He is a wise guy for a reason, but he's one of those people who will say the thing that you wish you could have thought of saying at the time, or would have said at the time. But never to interrupt the flow of the thrills. When I was on Nurse Jackie, we were in a comedy category because it was a half-hour show, but it was really a drama with some humor and comedy in it. And I would deliver to the writing staff each of the 3 years I was there at the beginning of each season. I would say, just remember, comedy and drama need to be good roommates. You have the drama mask and you have the comedy mask. You don't wear them both at the same time. You don't want to have, I won't name a movie because I don't want to denigrate any of them, but there are some of those action movies that you see and you just sit there and say, I don't feel invested in this because there is no peril. This person is going to laugh through the gunfire. Nobody's going to get hurt. Or if it is, it'll be a pratfall or cheap or whatever. I have stuff in the book that hurts. I have stuff that hurts my main characters. And yet, in other moments, there'll be some lightness to it. And they have a romance going, so that also creates places for that. But I think if I had to summarize it, it would be, you deliver the thrills, take their breath away, but then give them a place to catch it, which is where the humor goes.
Write that one down. Sorry, be right back.
So your characters now, where do you get them from? Like completely dreamed up, or is it people you come across? Kind of a combination of all. I'm sure there's some of you in each character, but where do their soul come from?
Yeah, I always try to go real, and that's one of the things through all of the comedies that I worked on, which were quality shows. I was always very proud of that. That comes out of character. That comes out of the best storytelling comes when you have realistic characters that even if you don't like them, you understand them. Even if you're not rooting for them, you may worry for them or wonder about them. But I always try to start with a soul. That's your word, but it's the way I do it. The idea of somebody I know or an amalgam of people I know, yes. I wrote this book in the first person, and that has a lot to do with getting myself into it quite a bit. When I did this is actually the second iteration of this book. I'll tell you now. I originally wrote it in the third person, and in the third person version, I had as Anthony Bourdain did on Parts Unknown and his other shows, he would do voiceovers to begin the episode or in transition between scenes. And I wrote those in italics into the book, first person. I'll be frank, the book didn't take off on my first iteration. But what people always said is, boy, we love the voiceovers. That guy sounds like fun. And I think, well, that's the guy. Why don't I have his voice through the whole book? So I still have the voiceovers there, but I have the not only first person, but direct address to the reader, is my style for that. And what that did for me, akin to what I talked about in the Castle books when I had to go by instinct, I'm getting a lot more of my kind of wise guy stuff in there. And I'm happy to say, Walter Mosley gave it a very nice blurb. He talks about the heart and soul of the guy, that there's a kind of a nice guy in there too. Yeah, I try to draw on myself, but I do incorporate other people I know. Sometimes I go to people I've seen in the news. I try to stay away from other book characters completely. I try not to derive from movie stars or, films. I really try to go real. And if it's either somebody I know or somebody who I would say is in the news, who I say, oh, well, that could be that guy or a piece of that guy.
Well, you mentioned a few words in there that maybe I want to ask another one of my multiple pronged questions, but the word is reader. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I get a sense that you like to have a sort of intimate relationship with the reader, but reader viewers are different from books to movies to television, perhaps, or maybe they're not. You tell me. But anyway, can you explain your relationship with the reader?
Yeah, I when I was a disc jockey, the best advice I ever got was don't talk to the masses, talk to one person. And I've brought that through my writing now. Even though I'm doing direct address in this, and I do say, hey, reader, what do you think of this? That kind of stuff, that direct. Or I even have play with them a little bit. I say, now, I'm not kidding you here, right? I try to get that close because I really cherish that relationship, not just for the exercise of it or I almost said art, but I don't want to overblow. It's also the relationship. Somebody's sitting there, they're either holding a book or a Kindle or maybe they're listening on an audiobook. That's a one-on-one relationship that I cherish and I honor. They've taken time to sit and stay with the book, I hope, without abandoning it. But I think you have not just a relationship with the reader, but I really think consciously about this. I have a compact with the reader. I'm not a fan of the unreliable narrator. I know that's something that works for some people, and more power to them. But I believe that, I don't ever want to fool them. I don't ever want to play a trick on them. I want to make sure that they have all the ingredients to solve the puzzle along with me, and maybe they're not going to get it, but they're going to think they're going to get it. And that also is going to carry somebody through the book.
Well, how do you experience the characters you're writing? Do you tend to hear them? Is it like watching a movie for you? Do you act out the scenes yourself? What's your process?
I basically do it in my head. I was late to the party, but I watched American Fiction last night for the first time, and I don't know if you've seen that film.
Yeah. But, oh, yeah.
But there's that wonderful scene where he's sitting there at his typewriter and two people start appearing in front of him. And it's not like that for me. In fact, I can't even tell you exactly what my characters look like. I kind of have an idea of what they are. They're real to me, but they aren't specific to me. When I was writing the Castle books, I never saw Nathan Fillion in my head when I wrote them. I felt his presence, and I had that sort of Castle thing going on. Even Robert B. Parker, I saw him on the Today Show years ago, and somebody asked him, what does Spencer look like? And he had a hard time saying. And they pressed him, and he said, okay, if I had to say, he was Robert Mitchum in the 50s. You know what I mean? But even he didn't have that specific view of who his character was. But they talk to me. I think it's important to listen to them. It's important to let them take you where they're going, or restrain them from wherever they might take you.
What if they're not talking? What if they're quiet? What do you do then? Or if you're saying, hey, Joe, talk to me. I'm listening. I'm here.
Yeah, then I got to kind of wonder, okay, what circumstance have I not created for them to do their thing? It's a dance, and sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes I'll go a couple pages without one of the characters talking, and I'll say, well, that's not right. This is a two-hander. It's not one person, or there's a third person there. So I always am attentive to making sure that my characters are present when they need to be, or if I've overlooked them, I try to find an organic way to bring them in. But I never shoehorn. I don't fall in love with a line and just, if the scene goes another way, I don't try to build the scene around one line or a joke or a piece of business. It's experiential for me. I guess what I'm saying is I try to improvise it and then record it. And I do that with a fountain pen at first and then graduate who knows when, but at a certain point I go to the keyboard.
How do you do that? Everybody says I write longhand, Hemingway and all that. My mind goes 3 words and back a word, and 5 words and back 2 words. How do you write that down? How do you scribers do that? Tell me.
Yeah, it's always my starting point. It's never I don't go the distance writing longhand, but to me there's something tactile about creating that connection between the brain and the hand and the paper. It's like painting the words. I go back, I cross out, and having written screenplays, you draw the big box and you put the X through it and all that. I do all that too. But at a certain point, and especially if I'm on a super deadline, I don't do any dilettante stuff. I just, make the keyboard smoke.
So what happens when your character tells you to drive off a cliff?
I think they might die in the car.
Do you know the end? I mean, do you have an idea where you're going? I mean, I know there's pantsers. I'm a plantser. I plan and I sit. I just kind of write both in outline. But
yeah.
Do you know the end when you're getting there? When you're starting?
I kind of know the end. Sometimes I know the form of the end. Like I'll know that something has to happen here that's going to be this kind of a misdirect or this kind of event that's going to intervene. Coming out of television and also in genre form of mystery and also, spy thriller, you kind of have to know how you want to end, even if you change it. So I'll do like 18 to 20 page single-spaced outline before I start. But what happens to me, much like with the fountain pen and going to the keyboard, I'll be 1/3 through my outline and things will start steering another way. What I try not to do is adhere slavishly to the outline I created, 4 weeks ago, because that was then, this is now, that was an outline, this is a book. So I'm always open for surprises. I'm always open for a character to do something that makes me say, well, that could be made into something more. In the sequel to The Accidental Joe, which I just finished writing, first draft, I came up with like a major kind of like, oh, I could have that happen. And it surprised me. And I thought, well, that shouldn't just be an incident. That's something that may inform the rest of the book once that comes up. It has to. And I think that's kind of the joy of doing it. When you asked earlier if I like it, what I like about it is that there's kind of it's a playground. And I like being in that playground. Now, that doesn't mean a structure isn't important. I think you have to have it. I really do honor that beginning, middle, end, and the reversals and the turns and the twists and things that have to happen along the way. An ending that is surprising yet inevitable, as Aristotle put it, whoever he was.
Yeah.
But to get there properly, you don't want to come in with a Deus Ex Machina ending. You don't want suddenly a character to appear. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is when I create red herrings, and I think that's always important for the reader to enjoy and to keep them guessing, is that sometimes if I do it right, I reach the last quarter of a book and I say to myself, maybe the person I thought did it didn't do it.
Yep.
Maybe, if you built your red herrings properly, let's say you've got 4 red herrings, maybe one of them did it. And if you've done it properly, they plausibly could.
I'll tell you my problem. I just finished the first draft of my next book, and it's twisty, and I was certain I knew who did it. I'm like, maybe not. So I'm actually, as we're talking, I'm saying, I'm at the right 3 different endings. I've written one ending, but I'm at the right 3 different endings and farm them out to my readers and say, which one's the best, because I'm not exactly sure which is the best for the entertainment value.
Right.
Now, one can be cool and twisty. Look at me, I can do it. But I don't want the reader, your individual reader, going smacking their forehead and going, come on, that's stupid.
I'm gonna kind of do a footnote here. I got to tell you how much I'm enjoying this conversation. You talk about the experiential, like in writing a book. Mm-hmm. There's something about talking to people who get it.
Yeah.
Who have questions, and they're questions that are from a deep understanding of the craft, and I'm enjoying this very much.
Well, I'm not kidding. I'm taking notes. I always take notes whenever we're talking to people who've done it better. And I'll call you with my TV treatment for my books, too. I'll get to that later. I'll get your email there. Who's kidding? I'm not kidding. I've got to take the shots. Swing for the fence.
Yeah. Listen, but when you write something like this, The Accidental Joe, right, this book here, and you talk about Hollywood coming and knocking and stuff like this, when they assign an actor to take a role on that you've already written,
yeah,
does it affect how you write the future parts of it? Like, because I know when we talked to Anne Cleave, she was talking about that, how in one of the TV series they made of her books, she didn't care for the lead character. And not personally, let's say, but just who that character was.
Right. Bad choice.
Right. And so then it kind of interrupted the way she wrote. Do you know what I'm saying? So she had this.
Oh, absolutely.
And so how do you kind of get around that or handle it, or what do you do if that happens to you, or what's your experience in that situation?
Well, I think also go back and say, as somebody who was a showrunner on a number of TV series, I've done casting. I've been the person with the final say. And I'm keenly aware of mistakes I've made in casting parts, or people who I have cast or have been cast in shows I've been working on, that I say to myself, boy, can you imagine how great it is to have this person doing the material? So it's very important. But for me, I do, within reason, as long as the person who is playing the role is reasonably within the realm of what I sort of envision in that little tuning fork in me about who this person is, I'm good with it. Unfortunately, the Accidental Joe has been optioned by a major Hollywood studio, as they say, which I can't disclose who they are yet, but I had multiple offers on this book. The one that we ended up in business with is truly exciting to me, and I'm involved in the casting of that. In fact, today before this, we're preparing the pitch now to take to cables and streamers and whatnot. Part of the pitch is, okay, who would you pitch as potential cast members to play the certain parts? And it's a game you play, but you look at it like I'll make a list, and I'll say to myself, well, I loved the idea of this person 2 weeks ago, but now I thought of this. I mentioned American Fiction. All in my head today is Jeffrey Wright. You know what I mean? I'm thinking, okay, where can he fit in this? He wouldn't be my lead guy, but, wouldn't it be cool if he could play, one of the CIA people, for instance?
So I think you should put Joe in there.
Yeah, that'd be an accident. You get it? I have to play on where my name is Joe.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that.
Right.
I've done that.
It's like putting Tom Cruise's Reacher. Right? If you know the character, just give me a break. And I'm not going to go to the movie. Have a nice day.
Yeah, nothing against Tom Cruise. Great success. For all intents, probably a wonderful guy. But not Jack Reacher.
Right. Yeah, it happens. And your humor. How far can you go with humor? And do you have to have a certain timing? Is it something that comes natural, or does it work? That's always a difficult thing when you're dealing with certain subjects, right? So how do you approach that?
My approach to it is never tell a joke. In other words, I don't do the, hey buddy, why the long face kind of stuff. It's not three guys go into a bar. I just don't do that. I think then you're breaking form. I think you're telling your dear reader that they may be wasting their time because you're not honoring the investment they've made in a real person who's just basically saying things in reaction to what's going on, or in expressing a fear or desire through whistling through the graveyard. I can't give you an example per se, but I just try to make it something that somebody would plausibly say in that circumstance, and it would be something only that person could say, and only in that particular circumstance.
Well, that brings up a question, because I teach social media on the side and misinformation stuff, and I always tell my class, watch out for humor, because everybody has a different sense of humor. Right? So if you say something that might be funny to them, someone else might think they want to get you. Which leads to the next question is, are there things as you're writing that you say, ooh, I better not put that in because I'm going to get whacked? I hate to use cancel, but
Yeah.
whatever the word is, you do self-censor yourself.
I think I wouldn't call it I self-censor. I think what I do is I try, and again, it's the relationship with the reader. I try not to, I try not to be insulting to anybody or group. I try not to be unkind. If I have a character say something horrible, I make sure it's that character, and that character is known to be horrible. So it's not an endorsement by me of what they may say, because that's very important. But I don't write out of fear. I try to write out of respect. I think that would be it more than anything else. And I don't think you can go wrong that way. I mean, there will be things that I'm certain that I will say or do that shouldn't happen, and they'll get a reaction. But I find that naturally I don't need to kind of restrain myself, because I try to conduct myself as a gentleman, if you will, and I'm open to all in the world and all the good things that people experience and do, and I also try in showing the evil and detrimental things in the world, that they have a context and that villains never know they are. And it's really important to make sure that even if somebody is kind of horrible, that they have a family too, or that they have a fear of something that's legitimate, or they have a motivation for acting badly that we may not know about. The short answer is I don't censor, but I do try to be respectful.
Action, violence. Are you conscious of how you do that nowadays as people become more sensitive, or do you just write it as you think it should be?
I write it as I think it should be. I try not to be sensational. In a way, I write it the same way I write sex in my books. Is I try not to make it, tab A, slot B stuff. I'm friends with Larry Block, and he told me one time, he says, when somebody's driving a car, they never say he used his left hand to hit this turn signal, then with his right foot put his heel on the floor first, and then press the accept. You don't do that. What you do is you do the value of what's happening, and I find you can portray intimacy and get maybe even more out of it by going for values and responses on a human level, as opposed to what the specific physicality of the acts might be. Now, for violence and things, I have a torture scene in The Accidental Joe that it's pretty harrowing, and you wonder what the hell is going to happen here, and I want the reader to feel that, because it's happening to the main character, and it's through his eyes. It's we're telling the story in his brain, and so I need to have the validity of what he's experiencing. Otherwise, you're cheapening it. I think it makes it less real if you play games with it.
Well, I would say what's coming up next, but obviously you've already written the sequel, it sounds like, so I guess that would be coming up next?
That will be coming up next. I finished it a couple weeks ago, and I'm kind of, I'm off on a tour next week, so I'm kind of in that kind of high-class problem where I can't get to my stuff, because, between, getting the tour lined up and, various other parts of, promotion and marketing and so forth, it's hard. Plus, I'm working with my producers on the pilot pitch for the TV show, so sounds like I'm making excuses for myself.
Yeah,
you did a good job too.
Yeah. What I like to do is I always like to at least give it a week before I go back to it, but I think it's going to be 4 or 5 weeks, and I think that would probably benefit the work.
Sure. Are you going on a dancing tour, or is this like you
cooking tour?
Opening for Madonna here? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. No, I'm doing bookshops all around the country. I've got. I'll tell you where I'll be. I'll be here in Connecticut at R.J. Julia, which is a esteemed bookstore. I'm going to be at the Mysterious Bookshop in Manhattan. Then I go to Murder by the Book in Houston. Then I go to Poison Pen in Scottsdale. And then Book Soup in West Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. And then back here, East Coast for Thriller Fest. I'm on a panel there.
How come no one comes to Chicago area?
I love Chicago.
Winslow did. I missed it.
I love Chicago, but it didn't work out this time. But next time.
Next time, yeah.
If you show up, I'll be there, okay?
Oh, I'd bring you some barbecue. I'd smoke up a brisket for you, bring it over and say, hey, read my book.
Work in some jazz and blues later, and it's a night.
I know the club.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. See? Setting up dates already.
Not that kind of club, Al. No, jazz and blues club.
Well, what fun is it then? Come on. Gonna have some excitement here. Well, listen, so speaking of that, where do you like people to find you? Do you have social media set up, website?
All of the above. I have, my website is tomstraw.com. It was available, so why not? So I've got that, and that's got all my tour dates and, all the other, stuff from the book on there. But I'm also on X, which I still want to call Twitter.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. You'll find me on all those.
What about TikTok, man?
Yeah, get on TikTok.
Like a TikToker? Come on.
Yeah, get on there.
Well, while it's still around before they ban it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Life was easier for me when I was only on Twitter and Facebook. And since I added the other two in the mix, which I enjoy them, I like those sites. But now my compulsion to check my social media activity is now doubled.
Oh, no, don't do it. You get on in the morning at 6 and you post on all 20 of the social media platforms, and then you run. Get on.
No, you go back in 10 minutes and say, do they love me?
No.
That's
a mistake.
I'll drop a plug here. I got a student tell me about this app. It's called Opal, and you can block yourself at certain times. It blocks certain apps at certain times. So my core writing times, I've blocked social media out, so I just can't use it as a distraction. And I'm down like 30 to 40% week over week of social media usage time. It's fantastic.
That's another thing, when you talk about method. I'm I not only enjoy writing, I'm very disciplined about the closed door and just keeping my head in it when I'm working. When I think of my TV career and my novel career, especially with Nurse Jackie, I had the best of all worlds because I was in a room with other, 6 other very bright writers, and we got to have a fun day, and we got to go down to the set and got to watch them shoot and do the casting and all that other stuff. And then I had 6 months where I could close the door and be all alone with my thoughts, good or bad. And that's the best of all worlds for me.
And that's when you committed all the murders.
Yeah.
Yes, well, you'll never find them.
Connecticut's a good murder place.
Yeah. No, we'll get that on the extra version of the show, so that
Yes, after
hours we'll get into this. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. We've had the one and only Tom Straw on, and we're talking about writing and his latest book, The Accidental Joe: Top Secret Life of Celebrity Chef. So thank you for coming on the show.
I want to thank both of you for a great conversation. It went by very quickly, and I really look forward to it, and hope I can see you again, talk to you again sometime.
I love it. Thank you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.